Okay, this is the Facilities Master Plan Workshop for today, October 22nd, 2024. Anne Marie, can you just call the roll, please?
Councilmember Orgill,
Here.
Councilmember Weiss,
Here.
Councilmember Whalen,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Renagi, Mayor Kemp.
Here. Okay, Councilmember Orgill and Mayor Pro Tem Renagi are the subcommittee on this. Do you guys want to have any opening remarks or? Maybe you want?
Yeah, I guess that would be me.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we can jump into the presentation.
Okay, Gavin, I'll turn it over to you. So just let everybody know to set the expectation. We have closed session at 4:30, so we're going to do the presentation. We'll have council comments. We'll have some time for the public to comment, and the council is going to have to follow up after that. So we're going to have to move kind of quickly through this. So I'll turn it over to you guys. I think you need about 15 or 20 minutes, right? Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Yes, tonight is the Facilities Master Plan Workshop. I just want to introduce Dustin Alamo from Griffin Structures, who will be doing the presentation tonight. And I wanted to just do a clarification on one item in the staff report itself. In the financial section, there are numbers that are referenced talking about for immediate needs and the long-term needs, and it kind of goes through the different kind of dollars for the immediate and the short term. Those numbers weren't updated. If you actually look at page 2 of that report under the FCA categorized maintenance and upgrade needs for the city, it actually lists them out in the appropriate numbers. And I apologize for that financial section did get updated with the appropriate numbers. But if you look at that, the immediate needs are 17.1 million, the short-term needs 6.4, near-term needs 36 million, mid-term needs are 98.5, and long-term needs 155 million. So I just want to make sure the council was aware of that correction. And with that, I will turn it over to Dustin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Dustin Alamo, Vice President of Griffin Structures, Project Manager for this endeavor. I'm joined with my team behind me, which includes LPA, Design Architect. We have Circle Point, our outreach partner, a couple of members from them, and then Bureau Veritas representative that did all the facility condition assessment work. So I'm here to update on the progress that we made and to seek some input as we move forward. So we'll get started here. Let's see if I can advance this presentation. Okay, have a few objectives to discuss tonight. We want to inform you about our findings, give you some information about next steps and expectations, and then obtain your feedback relative to what facilities to prioritize, as well as permission to proceed with some breakaway projects that we see are candidates for those activities. To do that, here's our agenda. We'll talk about what's been accomplished. We'll talk about our initial outreach findings and our initial facility condition assessment findings, prioritization of projects, and then discuss next steps. So let's talk about what we've done so far and remind you quickly of the process. So the FMP provides essentially a structured roadmap to support the future growth of city services and community programs. We've been working closely with your residents, community organizations, and city staff to make sure that the plan reflects their input. So the process includes 5 main stages, as you see on the screen here. Outreach was started at the beginning of the project and extends all the way through the end. The facility condition assessment, which is essentially a health checkup on each facility and its related infrastructure. Programming, which looks at existing facilities compared to current operations and future operations. Planning, which takes all of those elements and tries to develop site-specific solutions. And then implementation funding, what it costs, how you'll pay for it, and how you can implement it. From a timeline perspective, we've looked at 26 facilities with over 288,000 square feet of building space. And since May, we've completed the facility condition assessment. We have the results tonight to share with you. We're nearing the end of the needs assessment and programming phase. We're still working through that. And then we're going to be turning the corner on developing conceptual plans, starting that process, which will take us into February of 2025. And then late spring next year, we'll be doing the financial analysis implementation stage. And again, outreach kind of extending throughout the whole process here. So let's talk about our initial findings. Over the course of the past 5 months, we've had over 140 touch points with the community. including stakeholder meetings, public meetings, pop-up events addressing key issues such as the city arts program, the animal shelter, library, and various community centers. In addition, we've also met with all applicable staff related to facilities within our scope to understand the functional and programmatic challenges and opportunities that are available. And we'll dive into the details of those here shortly. From the facility condition assessment perspective, give you a little overview on this. I want to highlight the Facility Condition Index, which is a primary tool for evaluating the facility conditions. The FCI provides a relative measure of health across your portfolio, so you can compare one facility to the next fairly easy and understand where it is in its condition. To do so, you basically divide the cost for repair divided by the cost of replacement, and you get a number. The lower the number, the better your buildings are. The higher number, the worse condition they are. And you can see the sliding scale from excellent, good, fair, and poor there. Now, this slide attempts to provide an overview of your facility based on, or your portfolio based on the FCA results that we've identified. On the right, you'll see the color-coded cells, which indicate the condition of your facilities. The first column that's colored on the left represents your current year, where you can see how each facility performs today. There's a lot of green, which means you have a lot of facilities in excellent condition. As you move across the timeline, you'll see how facilities currently in excellent condition move towards poor, and that's on the assumption that no investments are made. But of course, keeping up with your facilities would help remedy and extend the life of those facilities. So currently, overall, your portfolio is rated at 4% on average, which is noted as excellent. If no action is taken, the projected rating would drop to 15% or fair condition in 5 years, and then 39% in 10 years on average. Again, if no investment were made. This is a graph that helps offer a comparison of your community facilities relative to other communities in Southern California. You can see the dark, bold green line there in the middle of the page. This is essentially provided to provide context of where you stand in terms of other facility conditions and overall infrastructure investment. So priorities. Okay. In the previous slides, I explained the FCI ratings, which classifies facilities into the poor, fair, good, and excellent range. You can see that on the top right table there. We've also integrated the previously conducted seismic studies, which were conducted by another consultant, but integrating that into our overall master plan here. And the risk levels that were identified from that consultant included a high, medium, and low risk level. And so to try and give you a snapshot of each facility, you can see that little poker chip on the left-hand side of the screen. The outer ring reflects the seismic risk, while the inner ring reflects the FCI rating. And that was trying to give you a clear at-a-glance view of both critical factors for each facility. So it's important to highlight that for planning purposes, we focus on the 5-year FCI ratings. This approach helps us identify where the greatest needs will emerge, allowing the city to proactively prioritize, secure funding, and implement improvements in a timely and realistic manner. So zooming out and taking those poker chips and putting them on every single facility that are on our scope and giving those ratings accordingly, you'll notice that the most critical issues highlighted really in the red and in the orange are concentrated in fire stations 1, 2, and 3, the City Hall complex, and the corporate yard. Now, these facilities present significant concerns both in terms of their FCA or FCI ratings, as well as their seismic risks. Now, seismic studies weren't included for all facilities previously. So the library, playhouse, animal shelter, and CRC are part of the next group of concern based on their FCI ratings alone. But they also indicate that these will require attention in the near future. So I'm now going to turn it over to Susan from Circle Point to give an update on outreach findings. However, we're going to come back to this slide and show how outreach overlays onto this. So Susan. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon. As Dustin mentioned, we had some great conversations with the community regarding the facilities that we're studying, focused particularly on some of the key facilities in the community and some topics around programming. There is a more robust report available online that has a lot more details of the community conversations, but we wanted to just give some highlights this afternoon. One of the big topics was on recreation. We did have a couple of focused discussions around the CRC and the Suzy Q, along with setting up a couple of pop-ups just to have some general conversation. General consensus was around the CRC being underutilized and some requests for additional programming at that space, and really thinking about what else it could be. Some of the discussion was also around a pool in the city and really trying to find a place for a public pool. Locations included Lang Park and the CRC. There was also, as I mentioned, discussion about programming. So lots of conversations about the kind of programming people would like, additional classroom space, and just additional programming throughout the community. And the CRC offering space for potentially that, but also a different location within the city for those offerings as well. Lots of positive statements and comments around Suzy Q and what that offers to the community. There were some folks who did discuss, but primarily we heard that at the pop-ups, the idea of the CRC actually becoming a school again, possibly serving the southern part of the city with a school. So that was something that kind of came up from the community at large as well. We also met with the arts community and talked about the arts facilities. So the Festival of the Arts, the Playhouse, as well as just general programming for the city and the city arts programming. One of the requests and conversations was around additional workspace for artists, whether that's live workspaces or just additional affordable spaces for artists, as well as more performance space. You have great performance space. People love the performance spaces. There are some maintenance issues and concerns around some of those structural issues and existing performance spaces, but also a request for expansion of performance spaces, both locational within the city, but also to accommodate dance. And we learned a lot about fly space. So really having a facility that offers that. And accessibility issues with some of the facilities. There were definitely a lot of conversation around ADA and accessibility of the performance spaces. We also heard quite a bit about the desire for an arts and cultural center and locations discussions about where that could be varied. One of those was discussed about at the tennis courts and just even more broadly about the use of the tennis courts on the festival grounds and if there's a better and higher use for those facilities as well. We also had some focused conversations around the library, a lot of conversation around keeping the library where it is. That was very much consensus, something that the city is dedicated to keeping the library at its current location. But thinking about what the library could be varied quite a bit from folks talking about redeveloping a library on site to just making improvements within the existing structure, expanding space for classrooms or for study areas. And even thinking about potentially reusing the chamber space for that kind of expansion. Of course, finding a spot for the chamber to relocate would be essential as well, but that was part of the discussion. Lots of different conversations around what can be done, particularly on the interior of the library. So there was really great conversations around that discussion. And then finally, we had some focused conversations around the animal shelter and really had some discussions about what might be some of the needs there. One of those being emergency preparedness. So there's some power outages that occur pretty regularly at the facility. So really needing to and wanting to address that. Related to that technology, same kind of needing to upgrade some of the technology at that location as well. And some discussion about expansion. And it wasn't about expanding the facilities for more animals, but instead really looking at having space for adoption events, meet and greets, as well as staff space that's currently being used in other ways and volunteer space as well. So those were some of the key takeaways from the engagement and happy to answer questions later on.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation.
So a little more.
You got more? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So let's look at priorities for the projects. Just based on the FCI ratings and seismic data alone, we categorize the projects into a high, medium, and low ranking. So high priority again is fire stations 1, 2, and 3, as well as City Hall complex, which includes the police department, where the most critical needs have been identified relative to FCI and seismic alone. Medium priority covers the playhouse, courtyard, library, CRC, and animal shelter, which require attention less urgently, but will become issues. And then the low priority encompasses all other facilities which are in relatively better condition, can be addressed in later phases. But again, these are strictly on the premise of facility conditions, and we all know that that's not all this is about, as you heard with Susan's comments there. So this is the slide that we left off on when I was showing you the poker chips across the city. And let me turn to a refined outreach results, which essentially are, we like to focus on the cities that are best positioned to accommodate the community's feedback and requests. So I'll advance the slide here. We'll kind of zoom in to those facilities that we feel that outreach can be prioritized in the spaces that align with both community needs and operational feasibility. And then if I advance it one more, here's a more detailed view of the specific services requested by the community at each site. And this expanded perspective allows us to see exactly which outreach-driven programs and services are being sought out at particular facilities, ensuring that we address communities' priorities in a targeted and effective manner. And again, there's a lot of detail here, so I won't go into specifics here. But we're trying to get into determining some breakaway projects that we can advance here. And I understand it's a lot of information to take in. However, based on what we learned about the condition of your facilities and the feedback we heard from your community, we've identified a few critical breakaway projects that we believe could advance quickly. Fire Station 1 is one of those projects, as well as targeting the Village Entrance and Civic Center kind of as one collective holistic view. This would help tie in the parking structure, the potential parking structure thoughts, as well as all the civic components and the public spaces around there into one kind of cohesive vision. The library is another breakaway project that's been flagged here due to the $4.2 million that needs to be allocated soon. And then lastly, the CRC and Lang Park are kind of grouped as a set of breakaway projects, particularly because their low utilization rate, as we perceived and heard from the community, as well as their opportunities for potentially siting as a pool. So with that, I'll open up the floor to council here. Which projects do you feel should be prioritized, and do you support proceeding with the recommended breakaway projects? We're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council, who wants to start? Anybody? Bob, go ahead.
I just had a question maybe to start with on page 2 of the report, immediate needs, which are defined as important functionality and potential safety issues, years 0 to 1, 17.1 million. What's encompassed in that 17.1 million?
Ooh, there are a lot of elements in that because it ranges across the entire portfolio. So it'd be hard to just give you a list of that. But I mean, they range from electrical issues, mechanical issues, any kind of safety issue that we might identify or study that we recommend advancing. But we can certainly give you a list of each facility.
Would we be prioritizing those because they're safety issues?
Yeah, or just needs that have to be dealt with. So, just for example, certain systems have life cycle. Let's say an air conditioner is 20 years. You might be at the end of that life cycle coming into your immediate needs. And they all have kind of a, life cycle of their own.
Just to follow up on that, but that doesn't even include the items that are found to be the buildings that have been found to be seismically dangerous. Correct.
There are some in there. So, Michael, what's the first year has been identified as seismic? Okay, yeah. So the 2024 is year 1, and those have been identified as seismic assessments or seismic upgrades embedded in each of those facilities that are identified.
So it combines both the seismic okay, and then just as sort of a clarification question. So we have 4 fire stations in town, right? Fire Station 4 is the only one that is, well, the 3 of them in this report were found to be seismically dangerous at the highest level. Is that right?
Right.
And the only reason why Fire Station 4 wasn't in this report is because we're building a new fire station. So right now we have a city where all 4 of our fire stations are seismically at a high risk.
Correct.
Have you seen a lot of cities with that kind of situation?
Not as bad.
Okay, thank you.
George, have anything?
I have a question about the community recreation center. So in the consultant services agreement for the development of this plan, February 29th, council approved. The ad hoc committee said, direct staff to take an aggressive approach to maximizing utilization at the Laguna Beach Community and Recreation Center as an asset for the city, offering various recreation facilities and service because it's underutilized. The ad hoc committee is recommending the council direct staff to conduct a proactive and aggressive outreach campaign to engage the community, businesses, and other stakeholders, and implement strategies that increase the use of this center. When we bought this facility, it was promised that there would be a recreation center for residents. Right now, it's just the fire department and some people playing basketball and for temporary skateboard park. So what have you guys done between February, March, and today to make that happen? Or, I mean, where are you? Staff can answer that as well as you.
Yeah, Councilmember Weiss, that's probably more a question for staff. And I know Michael Leach is here as well to help answer that. But I know there's been a lot of work done on programming that Michael can talk about a little bit on the recreation side. And I know we're doing a lot more to help do additional programming. There are still some constraints, which were talked about in the report, which is parking is a constraint. There's only so many spaces available, so you can't overwhelm the facility. And we're trying, I know Michael and his team and the staff are trying to navigate that a little bit with the neighborhood itself. You don't want to overwhelm the neighborhood with too much parking, but the facility itself has some constraints with parking. And there's some additional constraints with the rooms themselves. So we struggled at first with just, for example, cell service in that facility in that area was just almost non-existent. So we spent a lot of time bringing boosters in just to try to get cell service into that area. The next phase of that is to try to bring internet to the classrooms themselves. One of the constraints we find is we have people who have interest in using some of the rooms, but because we don't have reliable Wi-Fi or internet in those rooms, they just can't use them because in today's world, internet is probably one of the most critical things in doing anything from teaching a class to using and accessing internet for your services there. So there are some constraints that we're trying to work very quickly to resolve, but it does take time. So I know Michael's probably at the podium here to speak about the classes, but there has been a lot of work on those recreation programs, and Michael can talk more about that.
Yes, thanks, Gavin. Michael Litchi, Director of Transit and Community Services. So yeah, Councilmember Weiss, we have done quite a bit on the recreation side, particularly this past summer. Having that facility has given us the ability to expand a lot of our summer camps and programs that we didn't have capacity for at the Suzy Q prior. So we did have a lot of new camps and classes that we offered over the summer, particularly children's art camps, science camps in the science room. We had a theater camp that the Laguna Playhouse helped put on using the stage and the gym, as well as skate camps at the temporary skate ramp. So we are programming a lot of new classes there. We have children's gymnastics classes, which we previously didn't have. So there are definitely more uses, and that facility is allowing us to grow our recreation offerings more than we could before because of the constraints of the facilities that we had. I think in order to grow it more, we're at a point where, as Gavin said, there's a couple of things we need to do. One is parking. So right now we have 42 public parking spaces at that site. And then just to give you kind of a comparison, at the Suzy Q, there are 74 public parking spaces and about 20,000 square feet of interior space. At the CRC, the former St. Catharines, there's about double that amount of interior space, 40,000 square feet, and 42 parking spaces as compared to the 74 at Suzy Q. And even at Suzy Q, you've probably heard complaints when we have large meetings there. Even those 74 parking spaces sometimes aren't sufficient if we have a large meeting or we have a lot of programming all at the same time. So parking is definitely a capacity constraint at that facility. And so on the recreation side, we work hard to make sure that we're not overscheduling so that people come and want to participate in a program and then have nowhere to park, because there aren't a lot of good nearby options. There isn't metered parking close by on Coast Highway to park. So that's one constraint. I think the other constraint we would need to solve for if we wanted to increase the recreation programming further is right now, for the most part, the rooms are kind of in the same state they were when it was a school. So you have a lot of classroom space, which is flexible space. You can have meetings, you can set up tables and chairs, but it's not ideal if you wanted, for example, have exercise classes or a dance room with mirrors and a floor. So we would need to make some small capital improvements to make those spaces a little bit more usable for recreation programs. We've also looked at potentially creating a gym area, like a small hotel style gym that has exercise equipment, workout facility, which we don't have in the city, but many other cities do have, that cater to seniors and just the community at large. So that would kind of be our next step to look at if we wanted to continue to expand beyond the new classes we're already offering in that facility.
Michael, as a follow-up question to what George was asking with regard to parking, are we consistently hitting 100% utilization of that parking lot?
So it really depends on the time of day and the time of year. Right now, there are still some residents in those condos that are adjacent to the facility who are using those parking spaces. We have put signs up to dedicate some of them, let them know that it's parking for the facility and not for the residents. But I think old habits die hard, and so a lot of people have been used to parking there for a long time. So we don't have parking sensors there, so I don't have quantitative data on how often it's full, but at peak times when there's classes in the gym and we have other classes going on at the same time, the parking can get quite full. And again, it really depends on the type of class. So if you have older kids, it tends to be more of a drop off. Parents drop their kids off and then come and pick them up later. If it's younger kids, most of the time they're parking and staying, or adult classes, same thing.
Yeah, because I guess I want to make sure that we're not just being overly concerned about a potential for full utilization of the parking lot, but maybe test it out more. And if we're consistently seeing that nobody can find a space there, then, but sometimes, people will just, there could be other options where people can get there by, using the on-demand or getting dropped off. So I just want to be careful that we're not letting our restrictive approach to parking getting in the way of full utilization of a city facility.
I know when we bought it, we focused on the fact that there were constraints on parking, and it was basically tied back to what the school permitted use was or intensity was. So is it clear, how, in terms of how we're administering it, for example, if somebody wants to have, we heard reports that there was, I think with the South Laguna Civic, they wanted to have a meeting there and they were told, well, it's too large and you've got to get a TUP. Are we clearly administering? How are we administering, I guess, the parking constraints there?
So we do have a policy for room rental at that facility, and council did approve that. It basically follows the same rental policy we have at the Suzy Q. So there's hourly rates for room rentals and the lowest rate for local nonprofits, highest rate for for-profits. And we are leasing the rooms. For example, over the summer, just before summer, Surf and Sand had a hiring fair there. And so they rented a couple of the rooms and used it as a location to have a hiring fair, because many of their conference rooms they would have normally used were out of commission during the construction. So, I think the biggest constraint in terms of events, it's not small meetings. Small meetings we can accommodate. It's if you want to have a workshop with 200 people, assuming that the majority of them drive, which is probably a likely assumption there, we wouldn't have sufficient parking for that many people. And in terms of space, most of those classrooms, while some of them do have doors between them, they're not large spaces. The only large space is really the gym and then the library upstairs that would accommodate a larger group similar to the multi-purpose room at the Suzy Q.
Well, it seems to me that one of the things that we need to do and look at there is the ability to add additional parking. And if you look at the space, it seems like the logical location would be underneath that field. I think if we are facing constraints, which sounds like we are, and we want to intensify the use, which I think we do for recreation purposes, as George was saying, one of the things, Council, I think we should look at is directing staff to explore the potential for additional parking on site there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had a question for you about the village entrance. So I know that, the breakaway projects are here that require immediate action and, the library's for another reason, it's in good condition, but we lose the money in a year that we invested to buy it, that's coming back to us. So we have to do something. But the other projects you mentioned, Fire Station 1, 2, and 3, and the village entrance. The village entrance, you say the city must balance plans for a new parking structure with the potential development of other facilities at the location, such as a museum, right? So how does the village entrance, with its plans for new development, meet the definition of a project that requires immediate attention due to critical building constraints or concerns? So we could put the fire station in another place, like, I don't know, maybe the Christmas tree lot or somewhere in North Laguna.
Councilmember Weiss, I can answer that question. So when the council was considering the facilities master plan, there was a number of projects or considerations that were brought forward, and the council wanted to put these kind of as breakaways. One being there was already some discussion of a parking structure at the village entrance. And there was concerns from the council. It says, well, if you put a parking structure, would that limit the ability to put other buildings at that facility? It could include, for example, the fire station, but include other facility or other services. And so the council was concerned, you didn't want to put build a parking structure that would constrain that area. So what we're trying in this breakaway project is to come back to the council and present. If you did put a parking structure there is the ability to have is or is not the ability to have other building pads or structures there. So you can understand the full scope of what could be done at the village entrance. The council also at the same time, when we were presenting the facilities master plan, highlighted some buildings that were already a concern. For example, Fire Station 1 was already needed improvements, some seismic improvements. It already had some significant concerns. And so with the ISO ratings and with the standards of cover report that the fire did, there was some consideration, well, if the building is already needed and it already needs significant improvements. But if you move the fire station, for example, over the village entrance, you might lower your ISO rating, improve response times just by moving it over to the village entrance area. But again, you're looking at a very limited space. So you want to make sure if you put a fire station there and you look at a parking structure, so and more building pads, we're trying to look at all those things. And so the council at the time said, well, these are things we should already start. Why wait for the end of the facilities master plan to make some of those decisions? Let's make those decisions, or at least consider those decisions now.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in the report, it kind of follows a parallel track, but it's moving along. You're not waiting to the end of this process to say, yes, let's do it. You've already made some decisions along the way, which is kind of, if you look at the report, kind of things we're asking sometimes the council to do. It is just, if there's things you see we should move on, let's maybe there's some consideration to move now instead of wait till the end.
Thank you. I think my point was that the residents have not expressed a great desire. Some of them want a parking structure, but most of them haven't said, yeah, let's put the art museum there. Yeah, let's put a fire station there. Yeah, let's put a surf museum there. I haven't heard that from the community. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. And I'll bide my time to listen to the residents.
I have a question. So on the City Hall complex where you rate it fair, so it's old, right? Their City Hall's old. Did you guys, when you looked at it, or is this for the next phase? Did you look at the kind of the layout? Because it's really not designed for a modern city government. Pretty disjointed.
Yeah, we simply looked at the structure, all the different building systems, but the actual layout, the space needs assessment, as well as concept planning will be in the next phase
Okay.
of services for sure.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and just one point, because I agree with George, what you said about I don't think it would be appropriate to put the village entrance as a breakaway project, but the analysis that, based on the direction of the council was to look at how do we find a new place for Fire Station 1 so we could have a seismically sound fire station. Because I think the residents do want seismically sound fire stations. And based on our ISO ratings, which are essential for how we can I mean, it depends on the whole insurance commissioner and how everything's going, but hypothetically, that would help us if we have the right ISO rankings, we could lower our insurance costs. And this was found to be a strategically, this location would work to improve with our ISO ratings for the right standards of coverage. And so that was the basis for starting with the fire station and the village entrance, because you can't put, if the fire station's at the village entrance, it doesn't make sense to be not planning the whole concept around that. So to me, it was based on public safety.
Thank you.
Anybody else, council? No, okay, open the public hearing. So we're going to finish up at 4:20 and then we'll have council comments after that. How many people want to speak? Okay. Let's take 2 minutes, you guys.
Good afternoon, council and mayor. Let me just say the first thing is I think we should make an investment and get an additional microphone over here so that they're not, passing it back and forth like a baton. I think we can afford that. I get riled up every time I hear about a parking structure in the village entrance. This is, we're creating a momentum for something that, as Councilmember Weiss just said, I don't think there is an agreement by the citizens that we want to make an investment in projects that will cost many tens of millions of dollars. And let's not forget, every plan that has been proposed has wiped out parking spaces that we have that are existing, for which that we own the spaces, we own the land. If we take those away and put them into a parking structure at the cost of concrete, which is the most expensive form of construction, we're going to duplicate, we're going to take those spaces and put it in there. We're going to wind up with very few spaces. And we've created a problem where by closing off the lower forest, we've taken away 60 spaces. How many? 46. Thank you. And so I think that as a priority should be placed way down behind things like the library, for which we actually have money set aside to improve that library. And before we start doing these other properties, and the recreation center should start. I mean, we've had that for years now. Let's fulfill the promise that was created to have recreation there. Thank you.
Hello, Regina Hartley. I'd like you to consider that the schools have often addressed the recreation programs in the summertime. They have plenty of room, outside spaces, as well as classrooms. What occurs to me is I'd like you to think outside the box a little bit and consider the St. Anne's property for artist live workspaces that could probably also double as ADUs to fulfill some of that requirement that the city has. If there's 40,000 square foot of space, it could easily accommodate 20 artists with studio space. And if there's parking for, I forget what they said, 25 or 30 spaces, you wouldn't have to deal with a new parking structure. So that's my input. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Kalinda, and I'm actually going to speak for the 29 nonprofit arts groups that we have in this small town of Laguna Beach. And I can tell you, every single one of them realizes we need parking at the village entrance. Also, they need performance space. The Playhouse used to be more available when it was a community theater and was used quite a bit. But now that it's a professional theater, they don't have the time. The high school used to be more available. We actually put money into that auditorium. My memory is about $300,000. So the community would have more use of it. That's become very difficult. So what I would like, and when you bought St. Catherine's, everybody got so jazzed. We were going to get to use that gym as a theater. Well, not happening. So I want to make a push for making sure the Forum Theater, which is a community asset, has 240 seats. It needs to be ADA compliant and soundproof. And there are some plans to extend the stage. And so there is better sight lines. It's got bathrooms. We have a jewel there that just needs updating. And my last, I usually don't even speak this long. The Neighborhood Congregational Church, Bridge Hall, is an absolute amazing performance space. There are plans to make that community viable. Has a kitchen, has a beautiful patio, and you could put Artists Live Work there with that space as almost as a cultural center. Thank you.
Hi, I wasn't sure of the format, so I didn't actually write up anything. So these are just kind of off the cuff from having read the report. I continue to be puzzled by what I can only describe as the city's kind of obsession with building parking structures. IBI told us that we had more than enough parking. We had so much parking that when we did the downtown specific plan update, we could reduce the requirements for parking from the private developers. So we had so much parking, we could reduce the requirements. But parking keeps perking to the top of all these lists. The IBI study, if you actually go through it, really said their magic number was 85% usage. They were never at 100% usage. They were never turning people away. You were only at 85%, 6.8% of the time. So and then one day, Councilmember Orgo and I walked around on a nice Sunday, to see if we could really find parking spaces. And there were parking spaces. I mean, I think there's a perception that a few days of the year we need some parking, but you don't build a parking structure for 7% of the time. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, a couple other miscellaneous things on the St. Catherine's. If we do what Bob is suggesting, which maybe what we need to do, that'll take a while. In the meantime, my suggestion is, why don't we just change the rules? Right now, for downtown, you just rummage around until you find a parking space. We know there are so many places that don't have code parking. Why do we stick to the code on St. Catherine? Why don't we just let people, go if they can find a spot until we come up with a better solution, because it could be years. And then the last comment is, there is a comment in here about accommodating, which is a good thing, future needs for number of employees and so forth. I'm really curious what we see that being, though. How many, 20 years down the road, how many additional employees do you really think we're going to need? Because things change. There's, artificial intelligence. There's people working from home. There's lots of things that could really go into that equation. So anyway, this is a good process. I'm glad you're looking at all this stuff. That's a good thing. Just a thought.
Good afternoon, Council. Les McCloskey, top of the world. I'm happy to see that this process is started, but I'm really concerned about the omissions from the project so far. So I'd like to illuminate some of those. We're going to spend $300 million in 20 years over basically all these project intensifications for the festival grounds, for a library, for a parking lot, for a parking structure, that is. Meeting places, community centers, all this stuff creates intensification. But what's missing from the plan so far is an FCI number for the mobility grid. How are you going to connect all this stuff together with a mobility system that's already saturated in this town? How are we going to take that step? That ought to be looked at too, and get an FCI for it, because it's probably failed already. But I'd like to see that happen. According to the numbers that came from Griffin, a parking structure is about 15 is about 1,500 per square foot. The fire stations are 3,000. I mean, I think those are an astonishing comparison that you're building an empty shell of a structure next to a fire station. It's only half price. These things are real expensive. They're concrete and steel. And just because of what John's already explained, we've got 3 sets of consultants that told us we don't need parking. Problem in Laguna is we have plenty of parking. We have too many cars. And I'm here to show you one of the solutions. It's one of 4, but I'm happy to see this process start. Thank you.
Just a quick question before we hear from the speaker. Do we have a hard stop at what time?
Well, we have a hard stop in about 5 minutes because we got to get our comments back.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Julissa Peluso. I'm a resident and the co-president of the Laguna Beach Parents Club, and we represent about 200 families that live here in Laguna. I'm asking you to bring back a school to the CRC. There's a growing demand for alternative schooling in California, and many families in Laguna are actually forced to go outside the city to find suitable education choices for their children, especially those in South Laguna. A school at the CRC would allow the city to benefit financially from a lease, and as a staff member mentioned, the rooms are already set up as classrooms. Additionally, a school would allow use of the facility to serve the broader community by still offering and maintaining the property's availability for events and recreational activities, both during and outside of school hours. The facility is plenty big to do this. So it would allow for efficient use of the facilities without putting a very heavy demand on parking, as schools involve drop-off rather than, consistent parking. I urge you to seriously consider this proposal for the CRC. Please don't forget about us parents, because it's really hard for us to show up at times like these. I have children that are crying right now at home. My mom sent me a video of my daughter's rash, but I'm here because this is important. So don't forget about us, and please consider bringing a school back to St. Catharines. Thank you.
Hey guys, Steve Chatham. Just very quickly, I want to make sure that we don't have a left-hand, right-hand problem going on here we've got the microgrid study and the identification of a number of properties where we'd want to put a solar storage combination. And yet some of those same properties are also on the list here for consideration. So I just want to make sure that we are not looking at, for example, putting a microgrid into the St. Catharines facility when suddenly we're going to have to tear it down and put a swimming pool in or a parking lot or whatever. Same with the Act 5 lot, same with the lot here next to City Hall. So just want to make sure that the two sides of city staff are actually talking to each other and comparing notes and making sure that they're doing stuff in sync. So thanks.
Thank you, Council. My name is Gregory Israel from South Laguna. I strongly urge the Council to consider building an iconic library here in Laguna Beach. I think this place really embodies values of community education and the enrichment of its citizens that transcends wealth. I think public libraries represent all of those things. And finally, as an ex-SpaceXer, I strongly just want to convey that robotaxis, Elon's Tesla vision for summoning a little minibus is coming in early 2027. So if we're considering long-term planning, there might be a really brilliant vision there. And I did full self-driving from South Laguna to here completely autonomously, and even Thalia and Glen Eyrie was great. Thank you.
Hi, Judy Mancuso. And I want to thank Steve for bringing that up, because when we talked about the facilities management plan, I asked that we make sure to bring in the microgrids to that. So one of the questions that comes to mind is, did you have any idea what you wanted to do with St. Catherine when you purchased it? Because I feel remnants of Tiamo, and that we could be holding this thing for 5 years and then selling it for $1 million over. So, I feel that we've neglected these buildings for too long, and we should have known that our fire stations were in this situation and addressed it sooner. And if there's any breakaway projects, it should be 100% for public safety and not these nice to have projects that only a few people want. And let's see, oh, the Forum Theater, ADA compliance, I think that should be top of the list. So public safety, ADA compliance, and obviously taking care of the fire stations. Thank you.
Hello, Mary Locatelli. I'm sure you'll be surprised, but I've got some comments on the numbers, which I just need somebody to help me understand. The on page, I guess it's page 2 now, that's the actual numbers for what we're expecting to spend over 20 years is 313 million. But if you look at the table, replacement cost for the whole portfolio is 400 million. So basically what we're saying is over 20 years, we needed to spend another 75% of the current replacement cost to maintain the properties, which seems kind of high to me. I just did some major repair work on my property, and I can assure you I didn't spend anywhere near 75% of the market value of my property doing that work. Also, I have a question. If you eyeball, and I might be doing this wrong because I didn't use a calculator, and I'm not sure what's all included in the community center, but if you add up all the numbers on this chart here for St. Catharines, it comes up to, I think, close to 60 million. We paid like 23 for the land and the buildings 2 years ago, and now we're saying the replacement of the buildings alone are 60. I guess maybe we might consider selling it if that's the case. It would be a good deal. So I just need some help with that. And then the last thing is the next time we have a report, it would be interesting to me if we talked about how we plan to put money aside going forward to fund these projects. So thank you very much.
Mary, I think it'd be good if you just send us an email with those questions, because I don't think we're going to get to them today, but you could send me a note if you want.
Hi, Ann Christoph. I'm finding myself agreeing with several of the previous speakers. But at first I would like to suggest, what would it take to fix the present fire station? We just moved the management of the fire station over to St. Catharines, so there should be some extra space here. And it seems like we could look into just repairing what needs to be repaired to make the station earthquake sound. Regarding the library, they didn't seem to discuss at all the exterior of the library. And I brought some photographs to you when last time we talked about this, about how the library is supposed to look compared to how it looks now. And I'm hoping that you will do an exterior restoration to make the library look the way Fred Briggs designed it, and ask the county to give you the doors back. They had these beautiful stained glass doors that they just took away when they automated the doors. And we need to get those back. And I think we can work them and make them automated and still keep the look that he designed. I agree with Pat regarding the Forum Theater. It's just something we really need to use. And the ideas about Bridge Hall are great. And the suggestion of a school at St. Catharines is wonderful. You know, we fought in the 80s to save Aliso schools so that South Laguna would have a local school. And we lost that battle, and Aliso School was closed and sold, meaning that our parents in South Laguna have to ship their kids to the other side of town to El Moro, which, you know, they had a wonderful neighborhood school and they got robbed of it for all these years. And if we can have a school back at St. Catharines, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Good evening. MJ Abraham, South Laguna resident. I wanted to thank the council for doing this master plan. I want to thank Griffin, because when I saw this, I got back from Hawaii and was so relaxed, and then my blood pressure went through the roof. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're talking about all these things we want to do. And I like the progressiveness, but I asked the council to get focused on this. Live within our means, stop with the Laguna Canyon Road and the whatever else, because this is a big ticket item for us, for our grandchildren, for our kids and our grandchildren. And I think that live within our means, please, and address these things. Yes, we need fire departments that are adequate and safe. and can get to us when we need them. So please, that's all I'm asking. I don't know about the individual issues with the theater and all of those things, but please take this seriously and get on it. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you make it quick, Cindy, because we got.
Real quick, Sandy Pruitt, Laguna Beach Live. Please give more attention to the arts. Lots of talk about recreation in St. Catharines, but we were promised more for the arts, and I hope we'll get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I'll close the public
Could I
hearing.
start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think regarding especially MJ's comments, and I think what we really need to do long-term is come up with a strategic financial plan. And on page 6 of the report, it talks about Laguna Beach, the path forward. I think we can come up with a better title, maybe Vision 2035 or something along those lines. But what we really need to do is figure out what are our financial resources and line that up with our planning initiatives. So we're not planning for things that we don't have the money to pay for. Because I agree, we need to be laser focused on that. One of the reasons why we brought on Dave Kiff, among many others, is that in Newport Beach, they have a facilities financing plan that literally will document what are the projects that they're doing in 2030 and saving the money for them now so that they could be proactively investing. Because we really don't want to get to a point. What we have to do is correct for almost 100 years as their city reaches its 100th year birthday of not investing in infrastructure. So, and then I think as part of that, we have to look at these facilities master plan in the context of all of our other plans and put them all in this 20-year plan. So that's one of the recommended actions that I'm supportive of. Ultimately, I'm supportive of John Thomas's recommendation regarding the CRC of kind of throwing away the rules that we have related to parking there. And if it becomes a problem, we can address it then. But I think he's right that we should utilize that space. And then I'm supportive of the recommendations for the breakaway projects. I think that Fire Station 1 is critical, and that requires a look at the village entrance. So that's the reason why that's there. And then finally, as it relates to St. Catharines, I'm open to some sort of to have our consultants look at some sort of an opportunity where maybe a portion of the site there could be a ground lease or some sort of a long-term ground lease that could accommodate a school or some other use that could be a revenue opportunity for the city. Because I think we do have a lot of needs here, and perhaps we only need a portion of St. Catharines to meet our recreation needs, and we can use the other portion of it to achieve our revenue needs. So that's something that I'm open to, and I'd like to hear from my colleagues.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with most of what, or all actually of what Alex just said, but a couple of things. So we are working on revenue. Bob and I right now are working on some revenue solutions. And then we've also some time ago did the parking study. I agree with we do need to consider the microgrid. So it's essentially what you were saying, Alex, is we need to really come up with a plan and combine all of these issues and make it a part of this whole a broader, more strategic plan. And I would like you all to keep in mind that when we compare these project costs, the city must use union labor on its projects. So there's a big cost difference that. So in the spirit of saving time, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I think, I'm in agreement that Fire Station 1 needs to be replaced. I'm not in agreement that needs to be at the village entrance. I think that's a decision that the residents haven't really chimed in on and don't really want for the most part. There has to be another place for it. I think we can put it in another place. Regarding the library, I think we need to act quickly on that because the money we purchased it for, 4.2 million, is going down in value as wages go up and as materials go up. And I think Ann Christoph's comments that we need to take that facade let's do the HVAC, let's do the roof, let's replace those doors. The county has the original doors. Let's turn it into something that Fred Briggs, who was a noted architect in town, would be proud of. Parking area needs some help too. But I'm in agreement with all of that. And a funding plan has to be fleshed out. $300 million is a lot of money. I do agree with the mayor that the downtown facilities of the city are kind of antiquated, but I don't have a plan for that. I think that's something that Griffin has to tell us what to do there and make some recommendations. We could move the Act 5 public works facilities out to. We have 4 acres of land that are owned by the water district that we could get at a reasonable price, at least, to put them out there. which would then open up a lot of space there. I think that should be considered. I also think, we've got owned 70-some properties in this town, the city does. We're not looking at any of them as surplus. Is that something that Griffin could do? I would like to add that to the list of saying, are these properties needed? And are they strategic? Are they mildly strategic? Are they not necessary at all? Let's think about selling them to fund some of the projects we do want to prioritize. I just think that filling up the village entrance with a new fire station, other buildings, isn't consistent with residents' want, so I oppose that, unless I hear from residents differently, and I haven't. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I support a new fire station, number one, whether it's at the village entrance or up at the Christmas tree lot. I mean, I'm open to having staff look at a location for that makes sense, but this building over here is not adequate long-term. Library, I agree with George. We've got the money. I agree with Ann Christoph. I remember those images. We should look at an exterior restoration of that building as well. On the LBCRC, we definitely talked about arts down there as well as recreation. So I want to see a focus on that in terms of looking at that for a breakaway project. I would like staff to analyze the parking and, come back to us at least with potential options there in terms of increasing capacity. I don't want to live forever with people parking on, parking down Coast Highway and trying to walk up to the place. So let's look at the possibilities there. And, artist studios, fine. Dance studio, we should look at that. I mean, I think we really need to engage with, as Pat said, the 29 arts groups. We should be meeting with LBAA or some other focus group that meets monthly and really brainstorm. It sounds like Michael's made some good progress on the recreation side, but let's beef up the arts side. And I would like to see us, analyze, it may not work, but I would like to see an analysis of whether, there's a community pool option down there. We don't need a very large pool anymore with the high school proceeding with their 45-meter pool. We could have a much smaller pool that would accommodate kind of the youth and some of the senior aerobics programs. So I want to brainstorm that whole thing and see, at least give council options when it comes back to us to consider.
Do you have something you want to say, Alex?
No.
Okay, just a couple of things. I agree with what Bob said. A couple of things. One is, I think on the Forum Theater, we could probably, I've been working on this actually on the side, because I think maybe we could get some private monies for some of these things in town to get things fixed up more quickly than waiting for city funding. So I think that's something we should look in for very specific projects. We could probably get some help on that, and that's what I would like to work on going forward. I agree with what Ann said about the library. The pictures of what the library used to look like. I don't know why they made it look like the way it looks. It really doesn't look very good. It looks like a 1980s, bad remodel. So I agree with that. And I would like to do as much as we can for the arts groups, because the arts are a very important part of our local economy here. And it's one thing that makes us really special in this town. And with regard to the village entrance, I do support the breakaway projects. And one of the reasons I think it's a good idea, first of all, we haven't even talked about if we built a parking structure, how we would even fund it. So we've been working on the funding strategies, I think. And whether or not people support that or not, it's hard to say because we haven't laid out any kind of plan yet. So, but we do need to make the best use of all of our properties. Having a big surface lot over there for surface parking in a small town like this, personally, for me, doesn't make any sense. I think we just need to kind of get ahead of the curve and make some room so that we have room to do things in this town, because we don't have any room. We're just tight. So with that, you have something else?
Well, I'm just wondering, it seems like there's some issues where there might, for the city manager, so you have clear direction. Do you feel like maybe we go to the slide with the breakaway projects and see if there's a consensus there? Is that what you were going to say, Dave?
Either that, or we'd bring it back as to what we think we heard and put it on the consent calendar.
Yeah, let's do that.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, we're going to go into closed session. The closed session agenda, there's 2 items on here. And the first item is conference of real property negotiators. The representative is Dave Kiff, and it's the property is 31562 and 31532 Coast Highway. And then we have another litigation regarding an employee.
Yep.